Welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living, where conscious spiritual living abides. We are radically inclusive spiritual renegades who are healing hearts and creating community. In this community, we encourage everyone to live in enthusiastic expectancy of their good, their abundance, their calm, their peace, their freedom, their health, their joy. Let's begin with prayer. So we take a deep, nourishing breath. And we feel the divine, the peace, the calm, the love of that almighty divine being flowing in, through, and as each of us. And we step into that calm and that peace and that freedom and that joy, knowing that all that God is, we are. So what I know to be the truth today, that in memory of, is a service where we have actually going to have music today. And that the music or the message or the meditation, there is something that has drawn each of us to show up today for this service. And that although we are separated, we are together in community, in heart. So I am grateful. I'm grateful for this opportunity to be able to come into your home, to be able to feel like we can meet together and have a conversation. I'm grateful to remember that the God without is the God within each of us, and that God is dwelling within us, and we are expanding all of the love and the joy and the peace that God is. So it's from that gratitude that I release all of this into the law of mind, spirit, and action. Because I know that the divine has already called all of this good, that the divine has already said yes to doing any of the heavy lifting in our lives. And that we can just say yes and release it. So I say amen, and we can affirm it together. And so it is.
Yeah, this is so much fun having you here, and everybody here. It's going to be a great time.
It is.
Yeah.
So we are in the home of Tom Tarver and Roy Phelps today in their music room. And so today we are blessed to have music. And so as we begin our meditation, Roy's going to play for us and sing the Hallelujah. So we take a deep, nourishing breath, knowing that God is in me. I invite you to release any thoughts of the outside world. Move into your heart and just know that God is in you. Become aware of your breathing and awaken to this present moment. Today, when our service is in memory of, I invite you to think of someone in your life who's no longer walking this planet. Someone who your heart loves and with whom you have still that personal connection through your hearts. Perhaps you miss their physical being, their hugs, the great conversations. Just bring them to mind. In a book of Celtic wisdom, John O'Donohue writes this: "We do not grieve for the dead. Why should we grieve for them? They are now in a place where there is no more shadow, darkness, loneliness, isolation, or pain. They are home. Somewhere within you is the knowing that in the silence of your heart, that you can still be connected to whatever person came to mind. That death does not separate us. That your heart transcends time and space. So as we sit in this silence, imagine what it would be like if the person that you love most that's no longer with you was right beside you. Feel that person reflecting back to you all the great qualities that you saw in them and filling you with love as we sit in silence. So as we return from the silence, bring back with you what you noticed. And if tears came up for you, remember that they are the Spirit of God overflowing from within and reminding you of that unconditional love that your loved one is sending you from afar, of that virtual hugs that they are sending you. And anchor that love in your body. Know it's possible at any time to connect with them. All you have to do is be still and think about them. Isn't it fabulous to have special music for meditation and music in the service again? This is a time in our service where we celebrate and we heal we begin with celebrations. Today we celebrate all the veterans who gave their lives for this country. And we celebrate all the healthcare workers who are playing many roles right now. Caregivers, comforters to the people that can't have their family next to them. We celebrate the community support that we've been getting as we've been going through this Facebook Live. That's allowing us to continue to have our building and to pay our bills. We celebrate our loved ones. So I invite you right now to just pause and think of something in your life that you would like to celebrate today.
I have a celebration. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad we got to do all of this. Roy's beautiful flowers that he does, and it's just such a nice thing to be bringing that back. You know, I haven't been able to really be with you, you know, in a month, maybe more.
It's been a while.
Yeah. So it was nice having you this week when we were setting everything up. It was just a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody in that community, our community, they're truly family. I hurt to see them as I do with my own family. So,
What a great celebration. So we take time now to provide prayers for the people that aren't celebrating for whatever reason. And as we pray, we create a circle of love for all of those people in the world that are seeking prayer at the moment. For we know that God is all there is. That the peace and the love and the joy and the freedom and the perfect health and all the great qualities of God are right there, flowing in through and as us in every moment. As individual expressions of the divine, all those qualities of spirit are available to us at any moment. And what I know to be the truth is that God is right where each one of us is. That God, that love, that peace, that calm, is who each of us is. So we pause now and place in this circle of love caregivers, the doctors and nurses that are healing and perhaps exhausted from all that they've been doing. And we send them a little bit of extra energy. We pray for our family and our friends so that they may stay healthy. And we pray for all of those that are suffering from the virus or from any other form of dis-ease that's creating with them something other than a life of joy. And I'm going to pause for a moment, and I invite you to just add into this circle of love anyone that you know needs prayer. And what I know to be the truth is that as we open our hearts right now, that we're able to send out from our hearts to everyone in this circle of prayer huge amounts of love. And that love heals. That love allows them to know, if only for a few moments, that right where they are, love abides. Love abides in their heart, love abides. It's coming to them to move through them, to help them deal with whatever it is that's going on in their lives. I also know that anything that they are seeking is also seeking them, and that dis-ease that they're feeling, that discomfort, whatever it is, that our love and our prayers are helping it to dissolve. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this opportunity for us to share the love of this community with the people in the world who aren't feeling loved. I'm grateful to know that the God without is the God within every person on this planet. However it is they're behaving, however it is they're feeling, that God is right where they are. And it's from that gratitude of knowing that there's no place where God is not, that I just release these words into the law of mind, spirit, and action, knowing that God's doing the heavy lifting, that we can just know that we are creating a garden of love in their hearts and that it's growing. So the divine has already said yes. So we can just let it be. So I say amen. And we're affirming it together. And so it is.
Well, I have this reading here that you brought, a blessing for absence. It's so touching. It's from External Echoes from John O'Donohue.
John O'Donohue.
A blessing for absence. May you know that absence is full of tender presence, and that nothing is ever lost or forgotten. May the absences in your life be full of eternal echo. May you sense around you the secret elsewhere, which holds the presences that have left your life. May you be generous in your embrace of this loss. May the soar of your grief turn into a well of seamless presence. May your compassion reach out to the ones who never hear from. And may you have the courage to speak out for the excluded ones. May you become the gracious and passionate subject of your own life. May you not disrespect your mystery through brittle words or false belonging. May you be embraced by God, in whom dawn and twilight are one. And may your longing inhabit its deepest dreams within the shelter of the great belonging. And that is beautiful.
And so it is.
It is. Wow. Yeah, just as we were talking earlier, you were saying, that all of our hearts are connected. And that's something that we can feel when we're even apart or talking on the phone or doing
Zooming.
this or Zooming.
There's been a lot of
Facebook,
family
yeah.
Zoom meetings that I've heard about.
No. But you still get that. You still can feel that. And that's what it feels like for those that have gone before. And in my mind, we spend more time discrediting or trying to come up with an explanation other than that reality, that is them. That is the feeling, because you just know sometimes.
Yeah.
It's just.
So Tom has a beautiful song to honor our veterans today before the message.
Well, I think everybody's going to know America the Beautiful, and but it's particularly important right now, because when we think about the way our nation is and all that we're going through, it's still our home.
What a beautiful lead-in into our talk today in memory of. I suspect that everyone watching today has known someone who has already died. Maybe it's not a veteran, but someone that you were close to. So on this Memorial Day weekend, I'd like to explore how we can remember those who have gone before us, and also how we can learn to let go of the grief that we have for the fact that they're no longer on this planet. And as usual, I have a question for you. What's the one choice you can make today to recognize that death is just a part of living? It's a part of this human process, and it doesn't need to mean disconnection. What's the one choice you can make today to recognize that death is a part of the living process, and it doesn't need to mean disconnection? So it's Memorial Day, so we begin by thanking all of our veterans, because there is nothing nobler than risking your life for the freedom of yourself and other people in this planet. And so today and tomorrow, Americans across the country pause to remember those veterans, to remember those brave men and women who gave their lives for our country. Many of us will be celebrating this year in a way totally different than former years, probably without parades, most likely without huge gatherings, maybe some small backyard barbecues with just the family. It's a different time in our freedom, and yet we have our forefathers and all of those that have fought for our country to thank for the fact that we have a life that we can live here and feel safe and free. So let us pause just for a moment and remember those who have sacrificed their lives for our freedom. And remember that, as John Kennedy said, as we express our gratitude, we can never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. To live by the thanks and the gratitude that our country is free. In a lot of ways, it feels like we should be redefining the term free right now, since we're a little bit cooped up in our house. And maybe that we should be defining what it means to risk a life, or to risk your own life for our country. Because right now our caregivers and our health professionals are fighting a different kind of war. This war against a disease that seems to have no bias about which country it attacks, or who it attacks, or how it's taking lives. So I'd like to honor all of the caregivers and the health givers and the people that work in our care facilities and our homes for the elderly, and all the people that every day go to work and risk their lives for the rest of us. You might have noticed that the title of today's talk was In Memory Of. So in addition to it being Memorial Day weekend and us honoring the veterans, today I'd like us to honor the people beyond the veterans in our lives that we'd like to remember. I remember my dad, who was a veteran. He didn't die in the war, but more significantly, I think we remember those people that have cared for us in our lives in some way. Mom and Papa, who've also gone before me. And this day, this weekend, happens to be a time that's especially personal to me, because my son chose Memorial Day weekend. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, was the date to decide that he was going to give up his human body and he died in his sleep. What I remember most about him was how kind he was, how compassionate he was, and I think my sister captured him best when she said yesterday to me on the phone, when he wasn't being really difficult, he was so fantastic and so delightful. And that's pretty much the truth. I mean, we have stories galore about him. He battled juvenile diabetes, and he was a brittle diabetic, and it was in the 1979 when he was diagnosed. And it was a different time. They didn't have all the pumps that they have now. They didn't have all of the testing machines that were a lot less invasive. He was on insulin twice a day, sometimes 3. So his body was going through a whole lot. And when his doctors diagnosed us, he looked at me in the eyes and he said, "You'll be lucky if he lives to 21. And if he does, he'll probably be blind, and all of his other organs will have lots of complications." Well, I'm happy to say that he made it to 28. We stole a few extra years. And what was, I think, important was that he lived his life knowing that he was dying, because he was extremely smart, and he knew that his life would be short. So he lived every day to the fullest. He did a lot of crazy things, which is why my sister said when he wasn't being difficult, he was delightful. I would get calls and think, oh my, what has he done now? He spent days, often weeks in the hospital, and yet he just had a zest for living. I'm grateful to say that he was a part of my life, and I learned so much from him. So much about how to live every day, no matter what the consequences. To do whatever you felt was going to make your day a little bit more full of excitement, sometimes too much excitement for him, or for me, and joy. And I do have to say that he lived his life so that he slid into home base when he decided to go home to heaven, having used up everything he possibly could have. And he definitely wasn't out. He was safe. He did at one point send me a message, and I do speak with him a lot in a different way now. But he sent me a message one time to let me know that he had chosen to leave his body that was failing him and that was creating all kinds of pain for him. He was a chef and he had neuropathy, so it was very painful for him to have to stand on his feet all day long, and yet he loved being a chef. So when he sent me that message, he said he knew that he could go home because who he was leaving behind were people that were strong. And he was almost right. We were strong, but I do have to say it took me 5 years and another message from him before I actually could let go of that. I missed his hugs, his real hugs. Now I just accept the virtual ones. And that 5-year story is for another time. Because today what I really want to say to parents who have lost children, or to people who have lost someone that was really, really close and important to them, and they just weren't ready to let go for whatever reason, that there is a reason why they were in our lives for the time that we were able to spend for them. And that they aren't lost. That they are really still here in our hearts. And we honor them most when we remember them with our hearts. I love these words. It's another poem from John O'Donohue, and it's called For Grief. And it says this: gradually you will learn acquaintance with the invisible form of your departed. And when the work of grief is done, the wound of loss will heal, and you will have learned to wean your eyes from that gap in the air and be able to enter the hearth in your soul where your loved one has awaited your return all the time. And I think Donahue was almost right. I'm not sure that we ever quite get over the loss of someone that we've loved. I don't think we ever stop grieving. We just learn to grieve in different ways. But I think it's very wise for him to say, we learn acquaintance with that invisible form of the departed. Because I talk to my son all the time. I have friends who have lost children that said, how can you talk about him all the time? I said, well, he's with me all the time. He's with me now 24/7. Before, we lived across the country from each other, and I saw him sometimes, and we talked occasionally, and of course we were connected, but it was very different. So I think it's important for us to learn to accept that just because someone has gone to a home where their soul feels that freedom and they don't feel any pain, that the wound can heal. There is a way that we can live with those precious loved ones in our heart and feel connected with them in that invisible world. In the reading today, Tom said this, may you know that absence is full of tender presence and that nothing is ever lost or forgotten. So I have a good friend, and she talks about people who talk about their loved ones who have died, and they say that they're lost, and she says, I just have the urge sometimes to say to them, do you want me to go help you find them? You know, and it made me laugh the first time, and I thought, you know, the truth is we do say we've lost a loved one. And I think that if we learn to reframe that in a different way, I think we know that they're not lost to us. We know that we carry them in our heart. We know that when we remember them, that they show up for us. And I mean, there will be times that I'll be driving and something crazy will happen, and I will remember something really silly that my son had done, because he was a jokester, so he would do all kinds of crazy things to me. But it's just those moments where, I mean, I will be sitting at a light and I will be laughing and thinking, oh, the people in the car next to me probably think I'm crazy, because here I am sitting laughing out loud. But it's because I had a memory of something that we did together where he was teasing me or laughing about something silly that I had done. I think that it's really hard sometimes for people to recognize that this human body, Tom always says, is just a rent body. We've only rented it for a few years, and we don't really know how many years it is, but it's on loan. Because the real essence of us is that core being of our soul, and our soul never forgets all of the people that have touched us. And it never loses touch with anyone who has meant something to us in some way. I know I have people that I might not talk to for 2 or 3 years because life gets busy, and then I realize I haven't talked to them, and I will call them and we can have a conversation like we talked yesterday. We'll catch up with each other, but there is this essence of us knowing that in some situations and in loving relationships, time doesn't really matter. And location doesn't matter either. So we can learn to have that acquaintance with that invisible form and really know that we can heal those wounds of grief. When I asked you to pause in the meditation and listen to someone that had a message for you or that just wanted to connect with you today, I'm sure that for every one of you, someone came to mind. And of course, I think my son in his jokester way came to mind so that he could touch my heart and have the tears of spirit overflowing. But he came in a very playful way to me today. It's interesting, I think, that we don't sometimes take time to just pause and connect with those people that are in a different dimension than we are. Because they're still there. We still remember them. We remember their delightfulness, as my sister would say about my son. I remember his hugs. I remember how, as a young child, I could never sit down without him wanting to be right next to me because he enjoyed that feeling of touch and of being close. And I remember those moments. Sometimes when I'm by myself, sometimes when I'm in a crowd and I see some other child doing something that I know he would have loved doing. And I think it also takes not only the remembering, but the how do we get through the grief of it? How do we get through the grief of, and I have people ask me this a lot after he died, what's it like to lose a child? I mean, it's tough. I mean, there's not really any answer. For a long time, I talked about a piece of my heart missing. And I'll tell you the story sometime where I know no longer that a piece of my heart is missing. It's a complete heart. But grief can return to us in so many intense ways on holidays that meant something special to us with that person whom we've lost, that has died before us. On this Memorial Day weekend, when we remember not only the veterans, but it is a time where we remember those people that have gone before us. And for me, particularly this weekend, I really think this was kind of a joke of his anyway, to choose Memorial Day weekend to die in his sleep. I mean, really, it would be so much like him to do that. You know, oh, I'll just make a joke of it. It's time for people to die. Maybe I'll just die this weekend. Especially since he came back and said he chose to just
let it go.
Die in his sleep, let it go. But the sudden resurgence of thoughts and feelings that sometimes can just have us be wound with that feeling of grief. There are a lot of things that we can do. You know, there are ways that we can keep our loved ones near and not let our lives be overcome by something that is sad and pulling us down into living a life that's not filled with love and joy. In this philosophy, Ernest Holmes said, in Words That Heal, instead of being overcome by grief, we should enter the joy of living. And I think that says it so perfectly. Instead of being overcome by grief, we should enter the joy of living. And when I read that again this week, I thought, that's exactly what my son did. And at his memorial, we had a dinner where we laughed about all the crazy things that were times, as my sister would call, when he was being difficult, and the times when he was being delightful. So I want to take just a couple minutes right now to just give you a few tips in case you're in that mode of grief, how you can get out of them. And the first tip is to take one day at a time, especially very close to when we've lost someone. I think we need to just allow the waves of feelings that come through and just honor them and know that those waves of feelings will also pass. And if they don't pass, at least they'll become more time between them. Consider planning ahead by calling a friend or having some plans to do with someone else. And what's helped me a lot was make a list of the things that are important to you. And then do some of them. Force yourself to do some of the things, even if you think that they're going to be difficult. For quite a while after my son died, I wouldn't go visit the Japanese gardens in Portland because it was a place that we would go together and we would sit on a bench and just have these great conversations because he was extremely smart and could go into all kinds of great philosophical conversations. So I didn't want to go there. And then I visited, and it was a magical experience, and I experienced him while I was there. So just being realistic about what happens and recognizing that there are physical limitations to us being able to be with our loved ones. But if we don't set ourselves up for moping about, we can get into that invisible form and appreciate their presence in a different way. Acknowledge the situation. Know that someone's not with us anymore. But allow them to creep into your thoughts. Allow them to be there. And if you're thinking about them and you're at dinner and you want to toast something in their honor, do it. Other people aren't going to care if you say, you know, I would just like to toast my son today because he just popped into my mind. I'd like to toast the fact that he was a great chef. Made the best blueberry cheesecake I've ever tasted in my life. Change things up for yourself. That's another thing. If you're dealing with grief, go do something that usually would bring joy into your life. And even if it doesn't bring enough joy or the same amount of joy, cry if you need to. But change things up, because change sometimes can be really good. And I would invite you to plan time to do nothing, to just allow yourself to sit. You might even get a journal. I recommend to people that they get a journal and they write memories in the journal. Then not only do you have a memory journal about all the things that you remembered, but you're spending time with them in your thoughts. And I know that they're sitting right next to you as you're writing. I think another thing that's important is that we learn to accept assistance. I was not good at that, and I recognized it was probably one of the reasons it took me 5 years to really move on. I just would make comments about, oh, I'm fine. So be aware that other people want to help you, and be willing to accept that help. Spend time with children. Have you ever noticed that children, when they hurt themselves, they're hurt for a little while, and then they get up and they're back like nothing ever happened? Children have this resilience that when you spend time with them, I think it kind of rubs off on us. So spend some time with children. And last but not least, be in service. Giving to others and being around other people that need help is a great way to get out of your own grief. It's, I think, a way of us recognizing that everybody has something to carry, some burden to carry, some grief in their life. And so when we're in service to other people, we get a first-hand view of that. So before I finish, I want to talk about a veteran who was actually in service. She was part of the Army National Guard medics, and she went out to dinner with her 88-year-old grandfather. And at a table really close to them, there was another elderly man who was having trouble breathing, and he collapsed on the floor. And being a medic, even though she was 7.5 months pregnant, she ran over to the guy. She gave him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and she revived him until the medics could come and take him to the hospital. She said, when they asked her about it, she said, I didn't feel a pulse, and so I just automatically started doing the compressions because I knew that if I could do them quick enough that he might regain consciousness, which he did, and he was fine and she was fine. But it was interesting because the experience for her of being in service was one that told her that even though she was in this physician assistance program in Virginia, that it was time for her to be in service again. This is what she said. There were times throughout my career where I didn't know if this is what I was supposed to be doing with my life. It comes with a lot of emotional stress. But after that night, it was just like I'm where I need to be. I'm doing what I need to do, and I feel blessed. And now she's enrolled in the Army's physician assistance program as soon as she finishes her studies in Lynchburg. So she was in service, and in that service she did recognize what her real purpose in life Even though she was in a stressful situation and in a stressful job, she knew that that was hers to do. So I invite you on this Memorial Day weekend to remember that each of us has had someone in our lives that has gone before us. And remember those words from today's reading. May you become the gracious and passionate subject of your own life. Let's pray. So it's a day when we remember our veterans, when we remember all of the people that are risking their lives in any way for the freedom of the country and for the lives of other people. We tap into that knowing of the divine that is filled with love and ease and comfort and peace. And what I know to be the truth today is that there is no one that has gone before me whom I've loved, that I can't connect with in that invisible form, in that great beyond, that connection of the heart, the connection of the soul, that connection where the fires burn within us of love. So I'm grateful today to remember that there's absolutely no spot where God is not. And there's no way that death can separate me entirely from the people that I love. It just requires me to have an acquaintance with them in a different form. I'm grateful to know that the God without is the God within each of us, and that we are all one, all connected. There's only one life, and that life is God, and it's our life right here, right now. So from all that gratitude, I just release these words into the law of mind, spirit, and action, knowing the truth that God has already said yes to all of this, to all of the beautiful gardens that we grow through connection. So I can just let it be. I can say amen. And together we affirm it. And so it is. So this is our time in our service where we actually think about our donations. And we received some donations in the mail this week, and I'm grateful for those. There's a lot of ways that we have that you can actually help us through your donations. And Tom's going to put the form there so that you can read those donations, read those many different ways. You can donate through Zella or Venmo by using the phone number 225-287-8887. You can text your amount to 225-320-5100. There's also a donate button on our website. And there's a way that you can mail in your donation. So whatever way you choose to donate and to tithe to us, we're grateful. And we just know that that would be a wonderful way to join us in keeping our community together. And Tom has a song for us.
Did you want to bless from the love of?
Yes.
Yeah, let's do that.
So Tom was requesting that we actually use our typical offertory blessing.
Yes.
So, from the love of pure spirit within me, I bless these gifts. I send them forth to heal, bless, and prosper. They do good works in the world and return to me, multiplied abundantly. And so it is.
Thank you. And this song, I Will Be, goes right to what you're saying. You know, when we are open and we allow ourselves to listen and hear, then we become what we need to do. We hear it.
could just hear everybody
Thank you.
clapping for you.
That song really hits my heart.
So we also have a conference call. So I'm going to put the number up there so you can see it. And we get together through community after this message in just a couple minutes today. And we will be talking about the service, sharing about our loved ones, whatever it is that we usually have a conversation together and then a special process. So this is our closing, and we'd like you to remember that Disney claims to be the happiest place on earth, but we at Center for Spiritual Living in Southeast Louisiana know that indeed we are the most joyful. So until we meet again, may you be wrapped in the arms of loving kindness. And may you connect with a loved one today in that invisible form, knowing that they are giving you a virtual hug and loving you unconditionally from afar. Have a great week. Join us Wednesday night for meditation. All the information's on our website and on Facebook. Have a great Memorial Day.